Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Life After Kids with Doctors Brooke and Lynn. I'm Dr. Brooke.
And I'm Dr. Lynn.
And we're so glad you're here. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, this week we are talking about some surprising symptoms of menopause. Our old friend. Old friend menopause.
Is it a friend or is it an enemy?
I think it's both. I think it's both.
It's both, yeah. The person we love to hate. I kind of am in love with it because once you're past it, like not having a period sounds pretty dang good to
that part is good. I agree on that. And I do think though that for some of us we're not sure if we're in it. And some of these symptoms are things that are popping up and they're not really well known. And so we're not even knowing that we're possibly in menopause. I know that's what happened to me.
Yeah.
So that's why we thought we'd bring some of these symptoms to light for you guys to be aware of.
Yes. It's great. And also, like, they can start earlier than I think most of us would imagine. For some women, we can start feeling these definitely early 40s and sometimes even late 30s.
Wow.
Just start to changes. Not necessarily that you're in menopause, but as your hormones shift, these symptoms can come up.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really not about age because sometimes people have hysterectomies and things that force them, things that force them into menopause earlier than they would have.
And I think big picture too is we're not talking about it enough. We're not sharing necessarily with each other, and just one of the biggest things for me, and I think now you too, that you're coming into this, is knowing what it is, that you're not alone and that you're okay.
They need to sit you down and tell you about this.
Why isn't there a menopause class or something like an owner's manual?
They're absolutely, we'll write it. That's what we'll do.
We should. Yeah. Because I think, the word, as in with anything in my life at least, it's always the wondering what if or what's wrong that's worse than what actually is. So and you just can know.
Yes. And what you touched on and just not feeling alone, when we start talking about it, it takes so much of the mystery out of it and helps you feel like you can actually conquer this because you're not alone.
That's right. So let's talk about some of these, like,
we know about the mainstream symptoms, right? Many of us know about the hot flashes,
right?
Night sweats.
Obviously, irregular periods. Either they're sleep
shortening or they're lengthening in between. Yeah. Sleep disruption.
Heavy bleeding. All the fun things. One thing that may be a little bit off the scope, but is talked about more than some of these other things, is anxiety.
Yeah, I think let's start there because that could be a symptom of other things, not just menopause. It could be
some of these other things we're going to talk about too.
Absolutely. So you have to figure out if there's something else going on in your life, and that's where testing of your hormone levels really helps.
Yeah.
But anxiety is related to menopause. And can you give us a little doctor speak why that is?
Well, a lot of that is because of the connection between all of your endocrine glands, or your glands that produce hormones, and your adrenal glands, which is your stress handler, is closely related to your ovaries and their output of estrogen and progesterone.
Yeah.
So often as your estrogen is dipping, we've talked about this before, cortisol is going up. Cortisol is
a
stress hormone. And when it is released in a higher dose, it replicates a stress situation in your body. So you get sweaty, you maybe can't catch your breath, your heart races, like an anxiety attack. And so, and not only that, just with your hormones and emotions all over the place. Just in general, I would say I've talked to so many women that are like, now that you mention it, I was wondering why, like, if you're the woman who has not dealt with anxiety before or any type of like emotional, that type of thing, and all of a sudden you're like, what's wrong with me? I usually have like such a level head. I usually don't. And you're noticing it. It's probably there's not anything wrong. It's your hormones are fluctuating.
It's what's happening with you in the hormone side of things.
Right.
Very good. Okay. And then we also have dizziness. So dizziness is a lesser known symptom of menopause. It's very real. I have personally experienced dizziness from hormone fluctuations, and in speaking within our community, it's very common.
Yeah.
More than we would think.
And that is like, here's a case where just knowing that. Because if you wake up dizzy, or you have, like, for you were sure that you were on death's doorknob. You were getting brain scans and
I went from 0 to...
And I'm not trying to make fun of you, but it's scary.
Disease in 5 minutes.
Yes. But that is a scary thing, especially, like, if you have a bout of dizziness which if you're prone to, like me, then a little bit of anxiety, if you get dizzy and then you're really in tune with your body and all of a sudden you're like what's wrong? Effect. There's something wrong. And then you get anxious. So yes, good to know.
Yep. All right. And then we have body odor. So pleasant, all of these symptoms.
So fun to be female and in your 40s/50-ish. Yeah.
Come on, throw it at us. We can take it.
Right. We're stronger than you think we are. Body odor. I did not know that one.
Have you experienced it?
Thanks for asking. I didn't know it. So no, I will honestly say, like, when I was more regular with my cycling, definitely I noticed an uptick in that around my cycle. Yes. So it's no surprise that body odor would increase if you're in menopause.
Yeah, and I think what can happen is maybe you haven't seen that for a number of years, maybe since you were a teenager to the extent, and then around menopause with the fluctuations, you just see, like you said, an uptick of that. It's just more prevalent or maybe stronger than it has been.
Yeah, it starts back.
Yeah. All right. Just to name off some other symptoms. Burning of the tongue, that can happen, just where you feel sensation and almost like a hot flash in your tongue or your mouth, something to be aware of. Cold flushes, so we're aware of the hot flashes. Sweat. Some people get cold flushes, where you just in a rush of an instant, kind of like a hot flash where it just comes over you. A cold wave comes over you as well.
That I did not experience.
Ringing of the ears.
I just was joking with you because I'm hoping that means the ringing in my ears is going to go away. I'm getting another 5 years. But listen, I've done a lot of research on tinnitus or ringing in the ear because of mine, and there's like a huge percentage of the population that deals with it. So.
Yes, and again, that can be something that comes from different areas or different other
many different things
causes rather. Could be something to do with the inner ear, could be something to even do with the neck, where you should have your chiropractor evaluate you.
Yep.
But in this case, it's coming from, again, the hormone fluctuations. So if you've ruled all those other things out, it could be that it's a piece of your menopause puzzle.
Yep.
And then last but not least, we've got clumsiness and extreme introversion. So,
I'm just laughing at this list. Like, we're just doomed. we stink. We're shy.
Up in our room,
we're social recluses. Guys, seriously?
No, you can only laugh. You really can't.
This is why when we get beyond this phase, man, it's like party. We're going to live our life and we deserve it.
We're going to live our life even though we stink and we want to be alone.
Yes, and when we get on the other side of menopause, we're going to live it even harder.
In spite of. So
right.
I love that. But yeah, I think there's a tendency to go inward anytime our bodies are going through a transition. And so I think that's where that extreme introversion comes from. You may have experienced that around the time of your period when you were menstruating. If you are still menstruating, there may be a couple of days out of the month where you just feel like retreating to your shell and going inward. And I think there's something real there. We've talked about that before, making sure you don't ignore that. You listen to that and examine what you're supposed to be paying attention to.
Yeah, and give yourself space. If you feel like you need that day or that time, it's okay. I mean, if you're doing that all the time and never leaving your house, that's a problem.
Yeah. But in this, if it's going to be temporary, and like we've said before, in menopause, sometimes your body speaks for you.
Yeah.
It tells you what it needs, and it overrides your...
At this age, it does.
At this age. So expect that as well. But if it's just saying, nope, it's a hard no, I'm not going to that party, or I am staying in this weekend, hopefully that's a temporary thing for you, because as people, we do need love and connection. Sure. We do need high fives, hugs, and connection and communication with other humans. But maybe this is a time where you just get to exercise that just alone time and like I said, examine that.
Yeah. And I'll add one more to this list.
Go for it.
Yeah, one more that I experienced that I did not know was related to menopause until I went through it.
Scary one.
What?
Scary one.
Yeah, and I hesitate to tell you all this because it could be something else, but heart palpitations. Yes. And I was having such bad heart palpitations in the height of my hormone imbalance that, I've shared with all of you before, but if you haven't heard it, I got to a place that I was afraid to walk up my stairs because I really legitimately thought there was something physically wrong with my heart. So I had everything checked out, and I would encourage you, if you're having symptoms, none of what we talk about here is medical advice. You definitely want to make sure that there's not an other underlying cause, but just know that for me, just knowing that that's what was happening was such a huge, like, and by the way, a stress response and anxiety can cause palpitations. So as soon as I was able to understand, like, Brooke, this is your body, this is hormone fluctuation, there's nothing wrong, start to calm myself down, then it was like unraveling a negative feedback loop.
And stopping the domino effect.
Yeah, and so that's something really to be aware of. And the first time I learned about that, interestingly, nobody else told me. You want to know where I learned that? I read an article by Oprah Winfrey. And it's an old article, and she was talking about going through her own menopause and saying that nobody told her that heart palpitations was an issue, and she struggled with it so much. Same things, thought there was something wrong. And I was like, that's where I was, and this was just recent that I read it, although she wrote it years ago, and I was like, why aren't we talking about this?
Right, which is the reason why we're bringing this information to you, because that was so helpful for you. You were such a resource for me. I would have been in, CT scan, and I would have done all of the things if I didn't have a friend to go to. And, again, I've had some things checked out, and if you have symptoms, as Dr. Brooks said, this is not intended to say, oh, you're fine, it's all menopause, because there can be other causes. It's just to merely let you know, once you get through that and everything's okay, that it's more than likely menopause.
Yeah, and because here's the thing, if you want to take my case, for example, I went to my PCP, I had blood work, I did all the things. I ended up at a cardiologist, even though my PCP was saying there's nothing wrong, just because
you needed the
reassurance. I needed to know, and I wanted to take it a step further. I did the 30-day event monitor. I met, we had, and at the end of it, the cardiologist, who was lovely, was like, there is nothing physically, there's nothing wrong with your heart. But he didn't have other answers, and I still had the symptom. So I walked away from that going, okay, I know there's not, nothing, no steps I need to take heart-wise, but then what is it? And that's where, when you know that, okay, your hormones can be a symptom, and I knew I was at that age, some other things were going on.
Brilliant.
So there's where this is why we want to bring this to you, that because a lot of times, and in fairness to the cardiologist, he's a cardiologist. He's not a hormone,
specialist. And he was reading the test, the objective data that he had, and he was telling you answers based on what he knew. So,
absolutely.
Outside of that space, it can be menopause.
Right. And here's the thing, and I'll leave you all with this, is that when it comes to your body and how you feel, you have to be your own advocate. That's just, it is what it is. If you're feeling something and something's off and you're not getting the answers, like you've gone to this person or that person or whatever, and something's still off, you need to be your own advocate.
Absolutely. And encourage you too to consider outside just traditional allopathic or medical doctors, because there are so many wise holistic practitioners, functional medicine doctors that consider pieces of the puzzle that those medical doctors and those medical tests do not. So you may find your answers laying outside of what we know as, medical treatment.
Absolutely.
Great.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. We appreciate you. Make sure you're following us on social media,